Let's turn to worker productivity. I think this is one of the most shocking of our graphs. Before Reagan, wages more or less aligned directly with productivity. As workers made more stuff and made more profits for their employers, they shared in that by having their wages go up. After Reagan, they flatlined even as productivity rose tremendously. How did that happen?
Well, I believe this is the most important graph, the most important relationship of this whole story, because it explains so much. The green line on your graph, the graph of people's wages, flattens out after the mid-1970s. That's why the following stunning fact is the truth, that if you adjust the money wages Americans get on average, then in terms of what they can afford to buy with it, then the wage we get in terms of what it can buy is lower today as an average than it was in 1975. That's an amazing statement. We haven't gotten a bigger cut of the pie for 40 years. Meanwhile, the productivity of the American worker, how much he or she produced for your employer per hour, keeps going up. That's the red line, that's the rising productivity line. Productivity measures what the worker gives the employer. Wages or income refers to what the employer gives the worker. If what the employer gives the worker flattens out, while what the worker gives the employer goes up, it doesn't take rocket science to understand that the gap between the few who get their hands on the rising productivity and the many whose wages don't go anywhere will produce growing inequality. And indeed, what Americans did, because they didn't want to face this situation, they didn't want to admit to themselves what's happening. What Americans did, the working class, was to make up the difference between their wages not going up and the fact that they were supposed to give their children and themselves the American dream by borrowing the difference, by creating a generation of people in debt over what they could sustain, which is why in 2008, the whole house of cards of debt and of this story of wages and productivity crashed around our ears. That hasn't been changed, by the way, since 2008. Productivity continues to rise regularly, and wages are as flat as a pancake, which means that the conditions that brought us the crisis of 2008, the global capitalist collapse, have in fact maintained themselves, threatening us at any time with another resumption of a downturn. And at that point, given the conditions that already exist in North America, Western Europe, and Japan, I'm afraid of anticipating where that could go.